Sadhu Lumpur. Thank you for your excellent talk again. The topic, especially of just do it, seems very relevant at the moment. And I can see it applying not just to meditation, but to many decisions in life. My question is in relation to a friend who's having some trouble, I guess, dealing with some attachments and worries about the future. He's a practicing Buddhist, but seems a little bit lost at the moment. And a lot of it's around financial security, around COVID and, change of lifestyle. So I've, just been sort of giving time, listening to him, but I'm just wondering when someone's really down and feeling quite paralyzed and scared to make a change, what kind of advice as a friend could I give? And in a Buddhist way, because he does have quite an understanding of Buddhism as well. Thank you, Lumpur.
Yeah, good question. I think many people are facing a lot of difficulty at the moment. So all the more reason to come back to the Buddhist teachings you've heard before and practiced before. If somebody does have at least some experience with Buddhism, one of the most useful things for lay people, because your lives are so busy and full of all kinds of pressures and worries, keep listening to the Dhamma regularly. This is why we have these particular live sessions, and there's many, many other sources of Dhamma out there. And we need to keep reminding ourselves of the teachings, because that does help to bring up mindfulness and some understanding to deal with the problems we're facing. Helps us to look at them with some good perspective, bring up some good feelings as well. And then also encourage that person to just be very patient with the situation and look to see, have a real look at their life more closely. And maybe, what we tend to do when things don't go our way, maybe we lose our job or we're having money troubles, we tend to just focus on what's wrong. See if they can also focus on what's right and appreciate what they still have in their life, the opportunities they still have. Maybe things are not as good as they would like or not as good as they have been, but maybe they're still good enough. And so Ajahn Chah used to use this term a lot, it's good enough. So even when you lose your job, say, for example, as long as you've got enough food and a roof over your head, it's good enough. And you can put your efforts into looking for new work, and obviously that requires patience and can be very depressing, when you don't get work as quickly as you want. But remember what you have, it's good enough. You have a place to stay, it's good enough. You have friends, family who are supportive, it's good enough. You have the teachings of the Buddha, it's good enough. How much do we really need in life? And that doesn't mean to say give up on life and don't bother trying to get a job or fix your money problems, but how much do we really need to be happy? And how much do we really need to survive in this world? Actually, we don't need very much. And that's one of the roles monks play in the world, isn't it? It's to remind everyone, well, you can actually get by on very little at all, because monks, they have very little in terms of possessions. We've got a bowl and robes. We don't have an income. We just live in a hut in the forest, which we don't own. And you can still find happiness in that. So I think most people in the world, especially in Australia, a relatively well-off country, most people have more than monks in terms of material wealth. So then start focusing on appreciating what you do have. And we have a whole store of good things, don't we? We have families, friends, good opportunities still available to us. So it's a time to adjust, isn't it? Encourage your friend to, okay, if having money problems, work problems, well, take time just to contemplate more deeply and understand what are the most important things in life. And maybe not getting the most ideal job, not having the biggest amount of money you would like, okay, you're not getting what you want, but if you still have your good health, or you still have a place to stay, you still have many good things, that's where you need to appreciate. And then look to see what you can do. And instead of just saying, oh, I've got all these problems, my life is no good, maybe just pause and say, well, what can I do for other people, even in this difficult situation I'm facing? Is there someone else I can help? And immediately your whole perspective changes, doesn't it? If you're facing difficulty, but then you're willing to do some voluntary work or do some favor for someone or give some support in one way or another to someone else, even if it's a very small thing, your own problems are put in perspective then, aren't they? And you realize, okay, I have problems, but other people also have problems, and maybe worse than me as well. Suddenly everything changes, doesn't it? So, when you're having money problems, maybe that's the time to do dana. Maybe not big dana, but to do dana, practice some generosity, some charity, some help others. And then your money problems don't seem so bad. There's always more we can do, so we have to be creative at these times and look for the opportunities, look for the way to practice of metta and goodwill as well. And you bring up goodwill for yourself, for others, even though you have problems, you can face your problems more easily because your mind is in a wholesome state. So there's always many more things we can do in every situation, but we have to look for that and try and come back to the teachings and use them.
Sadhu Lampo, thank you. I'd like to now invite our friend George from the UK. George, please.
Thank you, Lampo, for your talk on Dana. And thank you, Dita, for arranging all this. My question is to do with Dana. You talked about Dana, and in the chanting that we do in the evening, when we talk about the Sangha, we talk about those who are worthy of offerings, worthy of gifts, and worthy of respect. So with regards to Dana, is there a sense of discernment when you do Dana? Because, for myself, I find it easier to make Dana towards people, towards like the Sangha and things like that, that I find worthy. And it's more difficult towards maybe people who are asking for it, who my perception finds unworthy. So is there a sense of discernment, or is that Dana just a sense of just giving to whoever asks? Thank you.
Well, of course, all aspects of the practice encourage discernment, development of wisdom, and wisdom is gained through experience. So sometimes you just give because there's somebody right in front of you who needs, and you're able to give, and you help them sometimes. But then other times, maybe you do think about it more deeply. You realize, oh, this person, maybe they're not going to make the best use of what I give. So there's different aspects to it. The Buddha was once asked by a king, Pasenadi, how to practice dana, and the Buddha said, well, give where you feel happy to give. That's a good starting point. So if you feel comfortable, happy to share, to give to somebody or some organization or some project, and you feel happy, well, that's a good starting point. But then later he also taught the same king, he said, well, having said that, there's also a deeper side to it, is you have to think about what are you going to give, the kind of gift. You have to think about your own state of mind, and then also you have to think about the person you're giving to, what's going to happen with this gift you've given them or this help you've given them, what are they going to do with it? So that comes from the discernment, doesn't it? You start thinking through experience, the kind of giving you've done in the past, maybe what results did it bring, and you learn, don't you? And sometimes you learn, that didn't work. So one of my first understandings of this, I used to work in London when I was a student, and I started practicing Buddhism, so I got into dana, helping people in different ways, volunteering and so on. And I worked in the centre of London, and there were a lot of homeless people living there on the streets. and I'd see them every day because I was walking back and forth going to work, and felt sorry for them, especially in the winter. So I sometimes give them money. But then over time, just observing what went on, I noticed the shop I worked in, 3 doors out, there was a bottle shop. So I give people money and then they go straight to the bottle shop and buy their beer and their wine or whatever. And so after a while I thought, well, this is not working, this is not good. So then later I changed it to, I buy hot tea and sandwiches, hot sandwiches, and give it to them rather than the money. And they got really angry with me because they wanted money to buy more alcohol. But I stuck to my guns. I said, look, you're getting this because it's what you really need. And they would grudgingly accept it because they did need it and it was cold weather. But I learned that way. You learn about the way to give, what's useful, how you feel, and also the final result, what's it doing? And obviously food for somebody who's homeless and doesn't have much food, well, that's useful for them. But you also have to manage your expectations, don't you? When you practice dana, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go so well, and conditions change. And all of that is a place for discernment and learning through experience, on the grand level as well as the small level, helping an individual or helping an organization or helping in the world in any way. There's always plenty to learn. But at the same time, as I said, sometimes you just do it. So like, in this period of COVID, there are all kinds of needs arising in the world, particularly in poorer countries where there's, very little healthcare or very chaotic health response to COVID. People are dying, people are suffering. Well, maybe you don't think too much. You just say, I'm going to just give some, a donation or whatever I can to help. Maybe there's a charity or an organization doing, helping in one part of the world where the COVID situation is very dire. And you just give, and you don't quite know what's going to happen, but it's a response. You're in a position to give, so you just give and you hope for the best. Sometimes you do it like that as well because the need arises and it's staring you in the face, so you just do it and see what happens later.
Thank you, Luang Por.
So there are no more questions from the floor, Luang Por.
Okay, so we can end the session there.